right. Well, welcome to the School Turnaround Podcast. My name is Dr. Chance Lewis, and I'm so happy that you have joined us today. We have a very special guest today, Dr. Ford. And Dr. Ford, welcome to the School Turnaround Podcast. I'm so excited to have you today. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Glad to be on this podcast as well. Thank you for having me.
Good. So we've been knowing each other for a little bit now. Got to know each other better. So I'm just glad you had some time to get on the show and talk with me on today. So we won't keep you long today, but the purpose of the School Turnaround Podcast, as you know, as a school principal, school turnaround is a real thing in education,
yes, it is.
Particularly in schools. And I know you're experiencing that right now as we speak. So since we have a very large platform here, I would love for you to first introduce yourself and give the viewing audience a little background on who you are and a little bit of your story of how you got to the point where you are now, and kind of let us know what you're currently doing in your current role at the school.
Absolutely. So my name is Dr. Kamala Ford. I am completing my 28th year in education. I started off as a classroom teacher. I was a classroom teacher from 5th grade all the way up to 12th grade. In the middle and high school area, I did math. Then I decided to move into administration. So I've been an assistant principal on elementary, middle, and high school level, so all levels. I've also been a district administrator where I went in and performed professional development all across an entire district. And then in 2019, I was blessed and thankful to be the founding principal of Monroe Charter Academy in Monroe. So that's a little bit of background of my years of education.
Right. And so as a seasoned educator in the great state of North Carolina now, you've seen a number of initiatives come and go
Yes.
As it relates to education. But what I wanted to do today, because of the great work that you're doing, is really focus in on school turnaround at your school, Monroe Charter Academy. And based off of your years of experience and what you're doing now, kind of let us know the state of the current school that you are at and how school turnaround applies to that. And we'll start walking slowly from that point.
Okay. So at Monroe, we opened in 2019. And if everybody remember, that is right before the pandemic. So I tell everybody that we opened and closed. We opened with a bang and ended with a bang because our first year we ended with COVID. So for 2 years, we did not have to take state assessments. But going into that third year is when state assessments started to count. And so what we looked at is kind of where our students were after the pandemic. I will say, let me back up. One of the things that was good for us is that even during the pandemic, we didn't slow down our teaching. So even that very first year when we thought we were going to only be out of school for 2 weeks, and we ended up for a couple of months, after that first week of packets, having a staff meeting and saying, hey, our students cannot do packets for 2 weeks. Like our students cannot afford to miss out on that instruction. So we launched doing virtual learning then. I know a lot of the district schools weren't, but we were already ahead of the game. And I think that contributes a lot to where we are today. Then going into 3 years ago, being back in person, more of gearing our instruction towards where the students are missing the gap. I'm very fortunate that our curriculum, classical education, is we're able to have like that wraparound approach, that spiraling approach, to where we just don't teach in isolation. Everything kind of intertwines with each other. But I think the biggest thing probably about us is the fact that, number one, we've taken the time to get to know our students and really know our students, where they are, their strengths, their areas of challenge, and how to meet those needs. Second of that is that the teachers have taken the initiative to go above and beyond, pulling small groups, working with students one-on-one based on the assessment and the data that they're looking at in the classroom. And then third is being very transparent with teachers. With the parents. We are considered a low performing school for the past 2 years, but we've shown major growth. 2 years ago, We were low performing. Our reading was 20%. Our math was 5%, but we met growth. And
Right.
last year, I will say our reading went up to 28.8% and our math went up to 22%. And we still met growth. So we're putting in the work, we're getting the job done. It's just something that's not going to happen overnight. And I think
Of
that
course.
that's a conversation of being transparent that we've even had with our parents. So I even
Right.
had a parent meeting letting the parents know, how does the report card really look and really how do they come about? A lot of parents don't
Yeah.
understand the 80/20 model. And
Right.
so just,
And
yes,
oh, I'm sorry. I just want to ask just for a point of clarity, because for the viewing audience, some of out are outside of North Carolina. So
yes.
when you talk about the score and the growth, can you just give us the quick version of the 80/20 of what that means for our viewing audience as well?
Absolutely. So in the state of North Carolina, for our school report card, they use an 80%, 20% model. 80% are students that show proficiency. That means they show up one day and make a 3, 4, or 5 on the test.
Hmm.
20% is their growth, and that is used through EVOS data.
Hmm.
Um, that I believe is all over kind of the nation to show students this is where they are and then this is where they need to be at the end of the year. But when you're looking at students that are 2 and 3 grade levels behind, to really think if they are a low 1 and you think that they're going to
Right.
get to a level 3 in 1 year, that's really
Not
not
realistic.
realistic. No. But
Right.
if we can take that low 1 and make them a high 1, or take that low 1 and
Right.
make them a low 2, that's growth. They're moving in the right direction. We are slowly closing the gap. So those are the
Exactly.
conversations that we've also had with parents.
Great, great. So that leads me to the questions I just wanted to ask you to tap into your expertise so we can inform the viewing audience and then provide some recommendations. So you mentioned as the founder of the school,
Yes.
right? You had some challenges that you inherited upon opening the door, and you add COVID with that. So I want to talk about how you strategized during that particular time to start the school turnaround initiative from the inception, right? So,
Right.
so share a specific example for us that you can think about of a school turnaround initiative that you feel was successful when you opened the doors, and how did you motivate the students and teachers in the community around that initiative?
Yes. So I will say one of the biggest things was being open book, glass house to the community and to the parents and to the staff. I didn't shelter anything. I didn't like sugarcoat anything. I was very honest of where we were. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
important along the
Mm-hmm.
way of educating parents to let them know, what is happening, how important
Right.
it is for you to be in your child's life. Even if you can't make a meeting, reach out to that teacher and find out what's going on, because it definitely
Of
does
course.
take a village in order to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students that we have. So
Mm-hmm.
that was one of the things I went into, expecting from everyone. The
Sure.
other biggest challenge has been staffing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not just at our school; it's a nation. A lot of
Yeah.
people just not going into education anymore, and so making sure that we're hiring the right staff, to be able to meet the needs of our students. Are we getting it right 100% of the time? Absolutely not.
Right.
I think the other big thing for us for turnaround is that giving ourselves grace and know that it's okay to make mistakes. It's
Sure.
okay to, have hiccups. You just have to stop, review, assess the situation, figure out
Mm-hmm.
what is best for students, and then move forward. And
Sure.
sometimes
Sure.
what's best for students isn't best for staff, but
Mm-hmm.
you keep the main thing, which is the children that come into this building every day counting on us. So that's one of the
Right.
things that we did as well. Another
Right.
one for our getting our enrollment up, we hired a marketing firm to assist us
Mm-hmm.
in being more out there with the community, more social media, that presence for people to
Mm-hmm.
really know who we are. Even 5 years in the game, everybody still hasn't heard about Monroe Charter Academy. So we're always
Right.
tweaking and finding new ways to put our name out there and let them know all the amazing things that we have going on here.
And that's something people don't even think about for a school, that you have to actually hire a marketing firm to get students and families to come to the school, as well. And all of those initiatives, given what I know of you and the work that you're doing a great job based off your geographic location in raising the number of students and families there as well. And so another thing I want to ask you about, just so I can make sure we use your time wisely, is school turnaround work is hard, right? And you face a lot of challenges along the way, some expected and some unexpected. So give me some of the major challenges you have faced in the few years that your school has been open, some things that you expected and some things that you haven't expected.
I would say one of the challenges is being the only administrator and not having an assistant principal. So that has been a little challenge, because as the head of school, the principal of the school, we're wearing many hats.
Of
For
course.
me, I'm wearing probably 20 different hats throughout this process. I will say the other challenge with the turnaround is making sure to hire quality staff. And
Right.
I will say it doesn't necessarily mean that they have a teaching degree,
Of
because
course.
there's many people who can definitely teach students that don't have a teaching degree, but ones that are willing to learn. And most and foremost is that they're about the students, in the school.
Right.
The
Right.
other challenge is diving into the data, making sure to schedule those meetings with teachers to say, this is where our kids are, this is where they need to go. So that's extremely important as well. And that's one of the areas that we're still working on. We
Right.
have not
Right.
mastered it yet.
Right. And I want to ask you about one item you brought up.
Yes.
That's a challenge, and I know it's a challenge nationally, even in 2024. But just for our listening audience, how big of a challenge is it really to hire in 2024? Because so many people don't want to work, or not work like what we need them to do in a
Right.
school turnaround situation. So just for our viewing audience, since it is vast, just give us the reality around that in today's time. What's the reality of hiring quality people for a school?
I will say it's extremely hard and it's extremely tough. You're competing with salaries. Charter schools, can pay, certain ones can, but districts can offer a little bit more incentives, because they have a little bit more income or money
Sure.
available to them. The biggest thing I will also say, it's not all about the money, but just having people that want to work. We've run into where people just want to come and get a paycheck, but they don't want to put in the work to meet
Of
the needs
course.
of the students. Um,
Of
and
course.
then the other thing I think it's just people's mindset right now.
Sure.
It's they'll come in. We've experienced this year. We had people to just say, give a day notice, like, okay, I'm not coming back anymore. I've decided, and they've gone
Right.
to other schools. We found out, and
Right.
those schools didn't call to get a reference. Well, they probably didn't put our name down, because
Of course.
I'm
Right.
very honest. I don't believe in passing on something when they're not doing what they need to do here. I don't want them to affect any other children in any other schools.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that's really it. I think it's really all about the mindset of people wanting to work and have a drive.
Right. Now, another thing I wanted to ask you about from your seat, another thing that people don't really consider the amount of effort it takes to engage a community around a school. Parents, families, of course, the educators, community members, the business community around the school. So, talk to me a little bit about how that looks from your seat as it relates to the amount of effort that it takes to engage a community for a school, for an effective school turnaround process.
Yes. So that is one area that was pretty surprising to me, just all the focus and the energy that you need to put into it. I thought as a principal, I'll just come in, focus on the teachers and the students, will be
Right.
good. But no, you have to have the community buy-in. And honestly,
Right.
it starts with parents. I think when you create an environment where parents feel safe and they feel comfortable coming to talk to you, and they're enjoying what you're doing and how excited their kids are and how much they're learning, they are your first word of mouth out in the community, to spread the
Right.
word about the school. And
Right.
then the second is partnering up with someone who has more experience than you do. Like it's
Right.
okay not to know everything. And I
Yeah.
know for me, being able to partner with you, Dr. Lewis, that you've done the work of how to get
Right.
communities involved and being able to
Sure.
rub shoulders and say, okay, can you
Sure.
share with me how to do it? Because as
Right.
a leader, you don't have all the answers,
Of course. Of
but
course.
reaching out to those who have done it and networking, finding different organizations to be a part of, reaching out to your board and say, who do that can help us. Those are some of the things that you have to take into account.
Yeah, and it's very important because none of that skill set is taught in school, right?
Right.
So you're not prepared for that. You're really, on the job training, as they say, is so important as it relates to this. But what I want to do now, which I think is one of the most important elements that, when we created the podcast, we wanted it as a platform to share solutions with educators and other stakeholders around school turnaround. So I want to dig into your 28 years of experience, and I want to talk about some recommendations that you would provide for persons who listen to this episode. So let's think about first some recommendations for school leaders that are in similar schools. Okay, what advice would you give them if they were looking to initiate a school turnaround effort or they're in a school turnaround effort? What advice would you share with them that they can consider?
I believe the first thing is that no matter what decision or which direction you go in at the school, make sure that everything is geared towards what is best for students. I think that
Sure.
is first and foremost. The second thing would be to communicate and rally your parents together as far as what needs to take place. One of the things that we did is that we had a parent meeting. I ended up doing two, a morning session and an evening session, just to be able to reach more parents. So the morning session was for the
Sure.
parents that work at night, and the night session
Sure.
for the parents that work in the morning.
Of
And
course.
laying out, where we are as a school, where we're trying to go, and most importantly, your help. This is what we need from you to support us. And I think that was a big change for us.
Okay.
And most importantly, um, put all of your success that you can on social media so everybody
Right.
can see what you're doing. In the building wise, as an administrator, is block out your calendar. These are the
And
times.
what do you mean by that? When you block out the calendar, what would you do that? Why would you do that?
That way, that's your sacred time. That means
Okay.
that no matter what, unless the building's on fire or something major, nobody is to bother you during that time. That's when you're in classrooms giving feedback to teachers on great job that they're doing, or these are some areas that we still need to work in. Being able to have that. Also setting up monthly meetings with your teachers. Sometimes it could
And
be, go ahead.
oh no, I was just going to say, because what you're talking about now is the instructional leadership
Yes.
of that school leader, which is important with school turnaround. And those meeting times that you're talking about, I think is key. Also, you and I met initially at a professional development session,
Yes.
right? So Talk to us about, from a school leader standpoint, the importance of professional development and in moving how that moves the school forward as you think about recommendations for others.
Yes, I think that you have to always remember that you're lifelong learners. Professional development is that extra tool that you need to sharpen your skills. Teaching and education is continuing to evolve. Our students are evolving. They're different now than they were 10 years ago with how they're
Of
thinking and
course.
how, technology. So you always have to be a step ahead. And I feel like with professional development is bringing everybody together. Everybody's hearing the same message. And that way, when you're leaving out, everybody's working towards the same cause. But even as a school leader, you have to also get professional development. You need to find ways to sharpen your skills as well, and find ways to move your school in the direction that it wants to go in, or that you would like for them to
Right.
go.
Right. And you raise an important point because many school leaders don't value their own professional development. They're so deep into the reality of what's going on in the school, or not wanting to be away from the building, because
Yes.
they think it's going to, the proverbial burn down. If they're not in the building,
Mhm.
they don't take time for their own professional development. So which leads me to two other points I want to raise with you.
Okay.
So one is, we've seen many school turnaround efforts around the country. They may start well, right? And then let's just say a leader, is there, or they may leave, but the evaluation of implementation initiatives. How are you evaluating those things that are working? And how would you recommend to another educator who's watching this the importance of the evaluation of what you implement? Because we know examples of schools who implement one thing this year, then there's something else the next year. So how are you kind of thinking about the monitoring and the evaluation piece of what you're doing there?
Absolutely. So for us, it will be our school improvement plan that we've laid out for 5 years. Um, to make sure that everything that you're doing, whichever curriculum you're using, whichever supplemental materials, and that can be iExcel as an online program, iStation, anything that you're using, make sure that it's tied into your goals. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where sometimes we drop the ball. You'll have, it'll be like, oh, that's a great idea. Or we should incorporate this, or this will work. And you're right. Before you know it, you got 5 different things going on, and
Right.
you have now steered the ship off course. You're now not following, what you had planned or set to be able to reach your mark. So I think that's truly important, is evaluating every year. Like even with our programs, let's say for us, we use iExcel, right? And that assists our students with additional skills that they didn't get in the classroom, being able to
Okay.
give it back to them during our remediation and enrichment block. Well, if
Sure.
teachers aren't using that effectively, then you have to ask yourself 2 questions. Do we really need to keep using it, or do we need to make it one of those non-negotiables? So as a school leader, you got to take that into account as well.
And how do you make that decision? So once you kind of see what's going on from a data standpoint, as a leader, I know the final decision kind of rests with you, right? But who else do you involve in that decision once you kind of evaluate what's going on around that?
So since we're a smaller school, I've been able to, go around and ask the teachers, did you find it beneficial? Did this work? And that's why for iExcel, we've been able to keep it. We've had other programs that only one teacher used. The rest of them weren't using it because it didn't go along with our goals. So it was, having a conversation saying, this isn't working, guys. We could use that money elsewhere over here to be able to get more bang for our bucks. So it's just being, to me, just having that conversation and being transparent.
Got it. Got it. And the last area I want to ask you about is, let's talk about sustainability, right? Because that's not a topic many people kind of deal with in school turnaround, right? And so now we kind of get into the legacy question, as it relates to school leadership. But when you think about, as a founding director, you went into this with a vision, right? I know there are some hills and valleys along the way, right? Of course, to say it mildly. But then also, when you think about, there are some things from a sustainability standpoint that you would love to see continue, right? So when you start to think about sustainability, what advice would you give to educators, school leaders that are out there to ensure the long-term success and the continuous improvement of their school? Because every school has something that they can work on, right?
Yes.
So as we start to think about this, talk to us a little bit about your advice for these school leaders around sustainability over the long haul, even if you're not there anymore to see it.
So I will say for sustainability, keep your goals in front of you at all times.
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself grace because you know that you're going to have you could have population of students that's going to change. Your staffing can change.
Yes.
So not only grace, but flexibility, being able to be flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Constantly, probably monthly, I would say reflect. Go back and
Mm-hmm.
kind of reflect on what's going on, what's working, what's not working, and are we still moving in the right direction, or did we veer off?
Got it.
And the other thing I would say is to make sure that you create an educational environment that is safe and that is
Mm-hmm.
nurturing and that is loving. For
Mm-hmm.
our children, we don't know what they go home. We don't know what they leave us and go home to. We don't know what they have to
Sure.
deal with before they're coming to school, right? But if you
Mm-hmm.
create an environment where all students want to be there, they come through the door, they're glad to see you, they want to give hugs, and that speaks volume, because that
Sure.
speaks even to the parents to be like, my child was sick, but they wanted to come, like they did not want to miss. And I feel like if you
Right.
keep that environment, that even if another leader comes in here, to keep that going, like they would need to pick
Right.
up the pace.
Right. Good. Good. And before we go, I just want to just open the platform for you. What else would you want to share? I mean, if you can talk back to your former self when you were first starting, based on what you know now, right? What would you say? Because I know when people view this, people are going in, they have excitement, some fear, and, all of the emotional ranges that you could have. But where would you, kind of center your advice on any other areas that we didn't cover that they can consider if they're going to take on school turnaround?
So, that's a loaded question. If I could tell myself all over, is number one, give myself grace. It's okay to make
Yep.
mistakes. I do not have to be perfect. Um, to know that as a Black female leader,
Mm-hmm.
that there's going to
Yep.
be obstacles that you're going to have to overcome that you don't expect.
Sure.
Um, to know that everybody is not going to be for you, and it's okay. You just have to do what's
Yep.
best for students always.
Right. Always.
And when
Yep.
you do that, you can look yourself in the mirror and know that you're okay. And then
Good.
the other thing would be network,
Mm-hmm.
meet people in all different realms of life, not just
Right.
education, but just everywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
reach out to them. Don't ever be afraid to reach out when you need help, because
Right.
someone's always willing, to help you, because you don't ever know who's been in your shoes before.
Of
Um,
course.
and always grow, read. You as a
Mm-hmm.
leader need your own personal development. So get books and read and educate yourself as much as you can.
Good.
That's what I would tell
Good. Good.
myself.
Good. Good. Well, want to hold you long. So I just wanted to say thank you for taking
Thank
the
you.
time to join us on the School Turnaround podcast. I really appreciate your insights, and I'm proud of the work that you're doing because I know the effort that is going on at your school as well. So we just appreciate what you bring to the table and the value that you're bringing to students and families in that Monroe, North Carolina community as well. So thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
We'll appreciate
Thank
you
you for all you're
as
doing
well.
as well.
Okay.
Appreciate you, Dr.
Okay.
Lewis.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you.